I grew up in Louisiana. I was born in Germany. My dad's German, and my mom is from Louisiana. And as long as I was in school, she would come to my elementary school, and she would tell stories to our class. She's a professional storyteller, you could say. And she would tell German folk tales when she came to my class. But now, over the years, she has perfected these Louisiana ghost stories that she has. And so, past, I don't know, maybe 10 years, I've been inviting her to come to my creative writing class to tell her ghost stories.
I am Etha Simien Amling from Opelousas, Louisiana. And in South Louisiana, we live practically between fact and fiction. So everybody in Louisiana has a ghost story to tell. The first one I'm going to talk about is Kooshma. Kooshma is French for nightmare, bad sleep. Well, in South Louisiana, Kooshma is actually a witch. And this Kooshma, if you can't sleep at night or you're tossing and turning, Kooshma will visit you, and she will hold on top of you, hold your hair, hold you down, and come real close to your face, and you can't get rid of her. A friend told us about how it came to him one night, and he was tossing and turning and tossing and turning, and couldn't get it off of him. And went to school the next day. The neighbor said, "Gosh, I was visited by Kooshma. She came, and I could not get her off of me." Well, my cousin Pandy, Pandy is about a little younger than Cordula. He has a band, and his real name is Gabriel. Well, one night he came back from playing a gig in a little nightclub, and he said, "I went on to bed." His mom and dad was already in bed, and he said, "I was just relaxing in bed, and under the door he saw black smoke coming out from under the door, which turned into a witch. Long nose, strange face," and he said, within a split second she was on top of him. And he says, "I was fighting and fighting," and she was looking at him right in his eyes. And he said, "That's got to be Kooshma," and he was fighting and fighting. And he said when he got her off of him, he had his face was hurting, she had beat him, and he said he just felt miserable. And so he got out of the bed, ran out of his room to his parents' room, and he said, "I'll tell y'all, I was 21 years old, and I slept with my mommy and daddy that night." He's the same. He said he's had so many relationships. He said, "To this day, I do not like to sleep alone." He said, "I cannot sleep alone," because he's still scared. It's a terrifying thing to have a Kooshma. In Louisiana, before bars and nightclubs, they had house dances. They would roll back the carpeting. Somebody had an accordion, a violin, and they would serve gumbo and praline, and all the country folk would all come to the dance. And the mothers was chaperone. They always, girls couldn't go by themselves. The mamas would come, and the mamas would sit while the girls danced. And there was one particular girl in the town of Bellevue, where my grandmother's from. She was beautiful, very pretty, but she was 25 years old. If you're 25 and not married, you're an old maid. That's what they call an old maid. So she went to the dance, and all of a sudden, good-looking guy, well-dressed, fantastic dancer, danced, had a great time. She told her mom, "You don't have to wait for me. I'm going to go home. I met this guy. He's going to be my husband." And he was just a fantastic guy. And he said, "I'll take you to my plantation." So he took her to the plantation, and it was beautiful. And the living room, lace curtains, velvet. It was just gorgeous. My grandmother said it was, just a beautiful plantation up the road from where they lived. And we had his horse and buggy, shiny buggy, real pretty. And she went in and she sat down on the sofa, was admiring the velvet and the lace and the crystal, and just simply gorgeous. And he said, "Well, I'll take your cloak." And he took her cloak. The way the plantations are made, there's a living room, a foyer, and then like a dining room, and where they used to wake people when they died, they would wake them in that room. Well, she waited for him to come back to talk with her, and she looked 5 minutes past, 10 minutes past. She said, this is strange. And she went out into the foyer, went into the dining room, this room, and there he was, laying down in his coffin, dead. She got out of that house, she ran all the way down the road back to her house, and she never did get married. And the moral to that story is, you just be careful. Yeah. Another instance, my aunt told a story, again, a house dance in another little area of Louisiana, Orneville. And there, they were all at a house dance. Everybody's dancing, and the guys are just dancing and all having a good time. And there was another guy came there, same thing, dressed very nice, great dancer. The husbands was getting upset because he was dancing with all the wives and dancing, and just so two of the mothers who were chaperones, they whispered to each other, that man must be the devil. He must be a vampire. And he was across the room. All of a sudden he heard it. He stopped and he looked at him. And that old lady had some holy water in her purse. You know, holy water in the Catholic religion, it's blessed water. And when she took the holy water out and sprinkled on him, my aunt said he broke the door trying to get out of there as fast as he could. He pushed the door, broke the door, and got out. So that's the story of the, we say vampire. Now they say vampire. It probably wasn't, maybe, we don't know. And that's the mystery. And in Louisiana, they have a lot of trail rides. Every weekend, some riding club is a trail ride. So her boyfriend has 2 horses, and he was happy to find the house because it had property in the woods behind the house. And she'd come to work and she said, I'm so tired. I said, what happened, Vera? She said, every night we hear knocking. Knocking on the walls, knocking on the wall, knocking on the roof, on the ceiling. She said, we don't know what it is. She said, at least 3 or 4 times a week, they would hear knocking. And she said, I don't know what it is. And she'd get to work in the morning. I said, Vera, did you hear the knocking? She said, yes, again. And she said, so that night, her boyfriend said, and everybody's got a gun in Louisiana, he said, you can call the sheriff department because I will shoot somebody tonight. Got his gun, she got the spotlight, they went outside the house. She said, you shine the light all around the house, nothing. In the woods, nothing. Where the horses were in the pen, nothing. She says, we looked under the house, maybe coyotes, we have lots of coyotes in Louisiana, nothing. So they came back in and she said, I don't understand that. He said the same thing. He said maybe a friend was playing a prank. It was quiet a couple of nights, started again, knocking on the walls, knocking. So one Saturday morning, they were going to barbecue. He said, well, look, he was in the kitchen seasoning meat. The way the house is made, there's a living room, kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, bedroom. And Vera was making a salad. He was seasoning meat. And they heard knocking at the door this time. It was daytime, knocking at the door, knocking. And not just once, she said it was like with both hands, knocking. And her boyfriend got mad and he said, damn it, come in if you want to come in. And she said the door swung open, a figure dressed in black. The body stayed at the door and the neck stretched all the way to the kitchen. And she said the head was right there. Vera said, well, I started screaming. Her boyfriend was hollering, get out. She said, that's when we packed up and left. She said, as much as I hated it, we moved back in with my in-laws. Jean Lafitte buried money and treasures all over Louisiana, South Louisiana. In fact, on the property that my family owned, a close to 8,000 acres that was all divided up. And John F. was a scoundrel. He just was a terrible, robbing and stealing and everything. Well, my uncle, my great uncle, told us the story of and he was sitting on my sofa at home. He said, you know, I was plowing, and he had a plow, and he had a horse that was in sometime in the 40s, and he didn't own a tractor yet. And later on, he bought him a tractor. And he was plowing, and the plow hit something. And so he cleared the dirt away, and it was a wooden chest, and he opened it, and it was full of gold, silver, jewelry that, he had robbed from people. And he looked at it, and he said, let me see if anybody's watching me. And then he looked up a house, and on that porch, that was an old house on his property, wherein he harvested his sweet potatoes. He would put them in that old house until they could bring it to market. And he said, standing on that porch was an old lady dressed in white, looking at him. And he thought, I have nobody living on my property. Who is that? So he covered it back up, and him and my aunt Laurentine, my great aunt and uncle, they went back. They could never find that spot where the money was. Never ever. They looked, and he plowed and looked. Now, fast forward to about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, a cousin of mine died, and we went to the funeral. We sat in the back room. My cousin came to me, and he said, oh, did y'all hear? And I knew my uncle, his son, had bought a metal detector. She said, did y'all hear that J.C. did find a treasure on Daddy's property? And I said, treasure? He said, oh yeah, he found it, and he took it to LSU, the university, and he sold it to some of the professors. He came back, and his house, he had a nice house. He built an outdoor kitchen, a house with a living room and bedroom and kitchen and everything. And we was thinking, I said, I knew they had gold on that property. Another cousin, his brother, had found one gold coin. It was kind of oblong, and it was heavy. And I had it in my hand, looking at it. But that was before cell phones, and I couldn't take a picture of it. And we suspect that was probably some of the gold. As he was plowing, that gold came up. But now, my other co-worker, our ward clerk at a nursing home where I work, Audrey came to work. She said, Mama keeps telling me there's an old lady and an old man that come in her living room and sit on her sofa. She said, they sit on Mama's sofa. And Mama had a fireplace, and she said they sit on the sofa by the fireplace. She said, I told her, Mama, there's nobody in your house. She said, me and my sister spent the night over there. There's nobody. Mama, it's all in your head. There's nobody in your house. She said, Audrey, guess what? This morning I woke up and they were sitting on my sofa, an old man and an old lady. Now, Washington was founded, like Opelousas, in 1720. It's an old historical town, mostly French. Those Frenchmen came in from Paris. There's a bayou that runs through it that connects to the Mississippi River, and it would take you 3 weeks to get to New Orleans by the riverboat. And so that house is set far back from the road. So eventually Audrey put her mom in a nursing home. She said, Mama has Alzheimer's. Mama is seeing these people in her house. Me and my sister spend the night there. We don't see anything. So she hired 2 little black ladies to go and clean the house, and pack all the sheets and pillowcases and glasses. She says, me and my sister thinking about maybe selling, but she says, I don't know. So she brought the little ladies to the house. Everything was going good. She came to work. She says, I'm going to leave early because I'm going to go get hamburgers at Burger King to bring to those 2 old ladies who's cleaning the house and packing everything. Well, when Audrey got there, she said, she came back to work. She said, let me tell y'all what happened. I got to sit down and tell y'all. She said, when I get to the end of the driveway, those 2 old ladies standing there, Miss Audrey, we're not going back in that house. We came. She said, well, what happened? What's going on? She said, we was in the bedroom, folding sheets and pillowcases. We went in the living room, and they had an old man and an old lady sitting on your mama's sofa. Audrey said, what? She said, yes, we saw them. They were sitting on the sofa. Audrey said, I told them to look out, bring you all home. She gave them their hamburgers, and she brought them home and came back home and told us that story. Isn't that weird, huh? And Audrey said she's never seen anything. Her older sister didn't see nothing. But c'est la vie, that's life. There was a street in Church Point, and it was known for good time, drinking, gambling, big time in Louisiana, gambling, and it was one bar after another, one bar. And that was all owned by one man who lived in a really nice house. He was really, really rich guy, really similar, plantation. And he would never go to church, and his wife was Catholic, and he was successful, calling himself successful. Well, last time when he got sick, and he took to the bed, well, his wife invited her rosary group, the Chablis, the little rosary beads that Catholics used to go pray for it. All the little ladies went upstairs to go to his bedroom to pray. And when he woke up and saw those ladies, get out, he put them out. So one night late, she was in the kitchen sewing. Her and the children were eating in the kitchen, and he was eating in the dining room. He was just that type of person. And she heard some chains rattling. She said, what is that? And she went out into the foyer and looked up the steps, and there was the devil himself. She said he had horns, a face like a goat, and he had chains on his back. He was going upstairs to steal that man's soul. And she said she ran upstairs, and when she got there, he was dead. He had died, and the devil came to get his soul. And that's in Church Point. That's a little story that was told, so they say. Burrs Lane is a little small road. That's exactly how it looks. This is Burrs Lane. And it gets foggy, and you can't see one end of the road to the next. So they had a cotton gin there. In the 30s, 40s, even the 50s, people would plant cotton and bring cotton to the gin. Now it's all sugar cane, but then it was cotton. And my uncle, Liney, that's my dad's sister's husband, was the last farmer to bring his wagon of cotton to the gin. And he said he went, they paid you so much money for your cotton, and he was on the way back in his wagon. It was empty, and he said he heard something jump in the back of his wagon. And he said he was so scared, and he told the horses, giddy up, go. And he said when he turned around to look, it was a black figure with red eyes. He said something he had never seen before. And he was so scared, he was making his horse and wagon go fast, and he said he heard when it jumped out. And he told us that story. He said, really, Uncle Liney, that's something, that's interesting. And I said, wow, it's an interesting story. Now, Burrs Lane, at the end of Burrs Lane is a highway, and across the highway is a school, J.H. Augusta School. Well, the girls there stayed late one afternoon for a poster party, where they made posters for a game or whatever. And one of the co-workers, she works in the dietary department, Carla was her name. Carla said, I was telling the story about my uncle, and she stood up. She said, wait, is that Burrs Lane? She said, that's where we live. She said, let me tell you what happened. Now, this is like 50, maybe 60 years later. She said, me and about 5 girls, we were walking home, all coming to my house after the poster party, and we was walking, and we heard something following behind. One of the girls said, somebody's following us. Let's look. One of the girls looked. She said, I don't see anything. And they walked, and they would hear, they'd stop, and it would stop. And she said, when we turned around and looked, It was a big black figure with red eyes on that same road. My uncle saw it like 50 years ago, before that. She said, we took off hollering, screaming, ran to my house, got on the porch, and she says, my mom said, what's the matter, what's going on? And she told him about the black figure with the red eyes. Now imagine that, 50 years later. So we suspect that road is haunted, there's something going on Bird's Lane. Because I asked my mom, spoke French of course, what's a FIFO lane? She said, well, it's a jack-o'-lantern, it's a light that when you put a candle in a pumpkin. And my dad tells the story. Back then they would go courting on horseback. My dad was born in 1950s, about 1925, 30. They'd go courting on horseback. And he had him and his brother on their horses would go court the girls. And then on the way back, and he said, boy, he said, the FIFO lane was shining. You'd see a light. Now they seem to think it was gases from the swamp. But my dad said they'd see a light. And you'd follow the light thinking it was home, and it would guide you. We'd go this direction, and he said, first thing you know, we go back this direction, and back this direction. And he said, when that would go on the whole night. And she said, when daylight would come, we were way on the other side of the field, way on in the woods somewhere. And he said it would lose you, so they said, be careful. Well, one night he was coming back by himself from courting, and he said, here's the light again. He's following and following the light. And he said, this time he was getting close to it, and he thought, well, I must be close to home. I see the light, that's the house. His mom would leave a lamp on so that he would see his way. He'd know where home was and that, how to get in the house. And he said he was getting closer and closer, and the light was right on top of him, and it was coming fast. He rode his horse fast, got off the horse, got on the porch, and he said the light went right over the house. And he said his mama was waiting up. My grandmother said, what happened? He was out of breath. He said, my dad said I was soaking wet from sweat. And he said, the FIFO lane got me. And a lot of people have had instances where, whether it's your eyes playing tricks on you or what, but my dad said wasn't that old. I mean, I'm not that old. Neither is Cordula. He said, I'll tell y'all what happened to me. And that FIFO lane came right over it. Now, we don't know what it is. You'll see historians will say, well, that was gases from the swamp and moonlight shining and it's gases. What do y'all think? You just never know, what it is. We'll come to South Louisiana, we'll go through the swamp, and I've never seen any lights, but my cousin said, oh yeah, if you're riding through the countryside, you will see a light. And you don't know what or who it is or what it is. And that's called the FIFO lane. My girlfriend I graduated with, they built a beautiful home. And she said, I said, oh, Teresa, y'all built a house. She's 67 years old. She said, it's kind of late to build a brand new house when you're 67 years old. And she said, oh yeah, she said, and that's in the Lawtell area where the next story is. She says, I'm not ever living in a house somebody else lived in. So they built this beautiful home, me and my husband, brother, dad, gorgeous home. I said, well, what happened? She said, honey, she was a teacher's aide at the Head Start. She says, every afternoon when I got home, I'd see a lady and two children going up the steps in my house. I said, Teresa, what you did? Did you call them? Did you know? She said, when they would get to the top of the step, they would disappear. I said, really? And this girl, she was coming from work. She didn't drink. She didn't even smoke. She was just, so it couldn't have been that she was drinking or smoking or something. She said, I see them and then and she said, that's every single day. And she said, I can't take it anymore. She told her husband, we're going to build a house. And that's when they built a new house. When she would get there, her husband worked for the sheriff's department, and she said, I just turn around, go park at my husband's job, and wait until he get off from work. Or she said, I drive an hour to her daughter in Alexandria, and then she said, I drive the hour back. And she said, I'm not gonna spend one more day by myself in that house. And that's what she said, and now you know why, at our late age, we built us a brand new house. She said, I cannot live in a house where somebody else lives.
Well, thank you so much, Mom. We really appreciate you coming. This was awesome.
Y'all believe those stories?